Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Millennium TV Around the World News. This is Fahmid Islam with you. Before moving on, let's look at this week's top stories. World leaders adopt UN goals to end poverty in 15 years. The President meets the Pope. Obama and Putin to hold talks at UN. Chinese President Xi Jinping meets US tech leaders. Hajj stampede, Saudi King orders safety review. US Speaker John Boehner to leave Congress. Those were the headlines, and now the details. Pope Francis has called for further action on climate change, saying that it was a critical moment of history on the first day of his visit to the US. He talked about climate change and immigration during an address on the White House's South Lawn. Take a look at the key moments during Wednesday's visit between President Barack Obama and Pope Francis. Speaking in Seattle, he said, "Without reform, there will be no driving force. Without opening up, there will be no progress." Amazon founder Jeff Bezos and Apple CEO Tim Cook were among those attending. U.S. companies are eager to tap into China's massive market of consumers. Mr. Xi addressed China's recent economic troubles and said the government was taking steps to address it. However, he said, "I believe in the long run that the fundamentals of the Chinese economy are good," or to have been a fly on the wall when President Xi sat down with Apple's Tim Cook, Amazon's Jeff Bezos, Satya Nadella of Microsoft, and other U.S. technology leaders. "We are told the conversation covered regulation and clean energy, but surely there must have been something juicier." However, Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg joined Mr. Bezos and Mr. Xi later on Wednesday as they toured Microsoft's corporate campus in suburban Seattle. Mr. Xi travels to Washington, D.C. on Thursday to meet U.S. President Barack Obama. The meeting comes amid tension over Russia's military buildup in Syria and its annexation of Crimea last year. The two leaders will meet on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly. They are last reported to have spoken by phone after the Iran nuclear deal. Given the situations in Ukraine and Syria, despite our profound differences with Moscow, the President believes that it would be irresponsible not to test whether we can make progress through high-level engagement with the Russians. A senior administration official told that. The official said that the main purpose of the meeting from the U.S. point of view was to ensure that Russia abides by the terms of the ceasefire in Ukraine negotiated in Belarus in February. It is not clear if the meeting will take place after or before President Putin speaks at the UN. Correspondents say the Russian leader is also due to meet Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe on Monday. Another 863 people were injured in the incident at Mina, which occurred as 2 million pilgrims were taking part in the Hajj's last major rite. It is the deadliest incident to occur during the pilgrimage in 25 years. The king said there was a need to improve the level of organization and management of movement of pilgrims. It is the second disaster to strike Makkah in 2 weeks after a crane collapsed at the Grand Mosque, killing 109 people. As part of the Hajj, pilgrims travel to Mina, a large valley about 5 kilometers, which is 3 miles from Makkah, to throw 7 stones at pillars called Jamarat, which represent the devil. The pillars stand where Satan is believed to have tempted the Prophet Ibrahim a.s. Mr. Boehner has been under pressure from the conservative wing of his party, which has threatened to shut down the government over the funding of women's health group Planned Parenthood. An aide warned of prolonged leadership turmoil if he stayed in office. The news comes a day after Mr. Boehner hosted Pope Francis at the U.S. Congress. The 65-year-old was expected to make a public announcement at 10 local time, which is 15 BST, but after a long delay, he failed to appear and left the Capitol building through a back door without comment. The UK Prime Minister is expected to drop his opposition to Syrian President Bashar al-Assad playing a role in any transitional government. But he is expected to insist Mr. Assad stands down to allow reconciliation. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry said he hopes the talks can help find a political solution to Syria's crisis. Russian President Vladimir Putin and U.S. President Barack Obama will be among other leaders joining the 70th anniversary meeting of the UN General Assembly. Meanwhile, France has carried out its first airstrikes against Islamic State militants in Syria. President Francois Hollande's office said that French planes struck targets identified during reconnaissance missions conducted over the past fortnight. In New York, Mr. Cameron is also expected to use a series of meetings with other leaders, including Mr. Obama, to argue that a peaceful solution will require a different leadership which takes the whole country can unite around. The Prince also presented medals to outstanding pupils at Duke of York's Royal Military School near Dover. The first clue students had as to the identity of the guest was when the band started playing the national anthem. "I didn't believe it. I was so shocked," said 14-year-old Megan Davidson, a drummer with the school's military band. Sin Duno, 11, who was on parade when the prince walked past, said, "I thought, is that Prince Harry? Then I asked my friend next to me and he said probably not, but I said yes, it's him." Prince Harry, dressed in his Blues and Royals uniform and picked cap, was also given a private tour of the school's chapel and met with staff and sixth formers. The military school was established in 1803 in Chelsea by Frederick, Duke of York, to care for the orphans of soldiers. The prince met Simon Daglish, an ex-pupil and current governor of the school, when he took part in the first stage of a polar expedition to raise funds for charity Walking with the Wounded, which supports injured ex-servicemen and women. We'll take a short break. We're back in a moment with the headlines here. India Prime Minister Narendra Modi meets Fortune 500 CEOs on US trip. Modern mosque fire, 2 teenagers arrested on arson charge. Violent clashes at East Jerusalem's Al-Aqsa Mosque. Nations pledge new 40,000 UN peacekeepers. And Italian aid worker killed in Bangladesh by IS. Welcome back to Around the World News. United Nations world leaders on Friday pledged to end extreme poverty within 15 years, adopting an ambitious set of UN goals to be backed up by trillions of dollars in development spending. Pope Francis welcomed the new global agenda as an important sign of hope in his speech to the UN General Assembly and urged leaders to deliver on their promise to transform the world by 2030. Making his first address to the United Nations, the pontiff sounded a note of warning, saying pledges were worthless without the determination to follow through. Solemn commitments, however, are not enough, even though they are a necessary step towards solution, the Pope said as he urged leaders to take concrete steps and immediate measures to protect the environment and end exclusion. Billed as the most comprehensive anti-poverty plan ever, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals and 169 targets were adopted at the start of a summit that capped 3 years of tough negotiations. They will replace the Millennium Development Goals that expired this year and will apply to both developing and developed countries. The youths aged 16 and 14 were arrested earlier on Sunday on suspicion of arson at the Baitul Futuh Mosque in Morden. The blaze at the mosque, said to be the largest in Western Europe, was tackled by 70 firefighters. An administration building was badly damaged, but not the mosque. London Fire Brigade said a man was taken to hospital suffering from the effects of smoke inhalation and about 30 others left when the alarm was raised. The brigade was called at just after 12 BST to the mosque, which also has a community center attached. About 50% of the building's ground floor was damaged, as well as part of the first floor and a section of the roof. Station manager Philip Morton said this was a large fire and our crews worked hard in difficult conditions to confine it to the administrative buildings on the site, and thanks to their efforts, the mosque itself escaped completely unscathed. Narendra Modi invited them to make in India the name of a national program which aims to make India a global manufacturing hub. He said reforming governance was his top priority to ensure accountability. Mr. Modi's 5-day visit to the US will also see him meet top Silicon Valley leaders and attend a Facebook town hall. Among the CEOs who met Mr. Modi were Citigroup Chairman Michael O'Neill, MasterCard CEO Ajay Banga, Boeing International President Mark Allen, and Goldman Sachs President Gary Cohn. Media tycoon Rupert Murdoch tweeted after the meeting that he had a great hour with the Indian Prime Minister. Best leader with best policies since independence, but massive task to achieve in most complex nation, the tweet read. Police said the Palestinians threw stones and fireworks at officers who responded with riot dispersal means. The violence follows weeks of tension and a number of confrontations at the site. Al-Aqsa is one of Islam's holiest sites, and it is the Temple Mount or Haram al-Sharif site, also revered by Jews. The site is a source of religious and political tension between Israelis and Palestinians and a frequent flashpoint for violence. No injuries or arrests were reported after the brief exchange on Sunday, which occurred hours before the beginning of the Jewish festival of Sukkot. Dozens of Palestinians entered the compound overnight, fearing that large numbers of Jews would visit because of the festival. According to the AP news agency, a small Jewish group, the Temple Mount and Land of Israel Faithful Movement, has called for a march to the compound on Wednesday, AP said. The victims, all thought to be Syrians, included 5 women and 5 children, local media said. They were trapped in the boat's cabin as it sank, Turkey's Dogan news agency reported. Another 20 people on the boat's deck who were wearing life jackets survived, the news agency said. The boat is thought to have set out from the village of Gumusulk near the Turkish resort town of Bodrum, where 3-year-old Syrian refugee Alan Kurdi died earlier this month. Alan's death made international headlines when an image of his body washed up on the beach in Bodrum was widely shared. Some 300,000 or more migrants and refugees have arrived in Greece so far this year, mostly setting off from Turkey's Aegean coast, according to the International Organization for Migration. With several Greek islands within a few miles, thousands of people are attempting the dangerous journey every day. More than 50 countries pledged 40,000 troops for United Nations peacekeeping on Monday at a U.S.-led summit called to shore up missions under strain from the rise in global crisis. China scaled up its contribution, taking the lead in setting up an 8,000-strong standby police force, while Colombia made a first-time offer of as many as 5,000 troops. The pledges represent a major boost to UN peacekeeping, which relies on voluntary contributions from UN member states to run its 16 missions worldwide. U.S. President Barack Obama told leaders that peace operations were experiencing unprecedented strains and deployed in more difficult and deadlier conflicts. We know that peace operations are not the solution to every problem, Obama told the summit held on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly. But they do remain one of the world's most important tools to address armed conflict, he said. The Islamic State group says it carried on the attack, shooting dead Cesare Tavella, 50, in the capital Dhaka's diplomatic quarter. Police Commissioner Asaduzzaman Mia said Tavella was jogging when 2 attackers fired at him from behind. The US and UK urged citizens to be cautious, saying they had information Western interests could be targeted. They have also restricted the movements of their diplomats. It is the first time IS had claimed an attack in Bangladesh, where it has not yet announced a branch. In its claim, IS warned that citizens of the Crusader coalition would not be safe in Muslim nations. Police in Dhaka have not commented on the IS claim. Now the businesses news. The U.S. Commerce Department said the economy expanded at an annualized pace of 3.9% rather than 3.7%. The growth in the economy overall was due to strong consumer spending, business investment, and residential construction. Its rate is much higher than the 0.6% rate recorded in the first quarter. The growth rate is expected to have slowed in the current quarter, but in a speech on Thursday, Federal Reserve head Janet Yellen said economic growth appeared solid and the U.S. remained on track for an interest rate rise this year. The central bank head said as long as inflation was stable and the U.S. economy was strong enough to boost jobs, the conditions would be right for a rise. In Japan, the Nikkei index closed down 4.05% at 16,930.84. The index hit an 8-month low ahead of the closely watched Bank of Japan's Tankan quarterly business confidence survey due on Thursday. Japan's economy has struggled to pick up momentum after shrinking in the second quarter. A weak survey of Chinese industrial profits released on Monday also added to investors' concerns about the world's second-largest economy. Investors are looking ahead to manufacturing surveys on Thursday for more information on the extent of the slowdown in China. The Shanghai Composite closed down 2% at 3,038.14. It is the first time inflation had turned negative for 6 months, with an 8.9% fall in the price of energy largely responsible for the decline. Core inflation in the Eurozone, which strips out energy and food prices, showed a 0.9% rise, the same as August. The Eurostat statistics agency also said the Eurozone's unemployment rate for August was unchanged at 11%. Mario Draghi, the president of the European Central Bank, warned earlier this month that inflation could turn negative. The bank expects inflation to be 0.1% in 2015 as a whole, rising to 1.5% in 2016 and 1.7% in 2017. The ECB is spending €60 billion, which is £44 billion, on asset purchases under its program known as quantitative easing every month for the next year in an attempt to boost prices. It includes diesel-powered cars with the VW brand Audi, Seat and Skoda, as well as VW commercial vehicles. In the next few days, the company will give the vehicle identification numbers to retailers as well as coming up with a process for owners to check if their vehicles are affected. VW will then start contacting owners. The company stressed that all the vehicles are still safe and worthy. VW plans to present its plans for resolving the problems with the affected vehicles to regulators next month. Now the sports news. Konta, who won 21 of her previous 22 matches and beat world number 2 Simona Halep on Wednesday, served for a place in the last 4 in the decider. However, American Williams 35 won 4 games in the trot to set up a semi-final against Roberta Vinci. Konta's form will see the 24-year-old take over as British number 1. She had started the year 150th in the world but is now 66th and will next week pass compatriot Heather Watson in the rankings. Johanna played so well, she has had a wonderful summer, said Williams. It seemed like I was finished, but I felt the energy from the crowd. Konta certainly made Williams work hard for the victory, becoming the first person to take a set off her at the Wollongong Open after losing the first. She then led 5-3 in the final set and looked on course to record another upset at the tournament. This year, the title race has again come down to the last weekend of the season, and just like 12 months ago, it is Chelsea ladies who have it all to lose. However, second-placed Manchester City are the only team still harboring hopes of peeping leaders Chelsea to the title. Just like last year, Chelsea held a 2-point lead. Will Emma Hayes' side hold their nerve, or is history about to repeat itself? FIFA President Sepp Blatter and European football chief Michel Platini are facing an investigation by FIFA's Ethics Committee. The move comes after the Swiss Attorney General opened criminal proceedings against Blatter, 79. He is accused of signing a contract unfavorable to football's governing body and making a disloyal payment to UEFA President Platini, 60. Blatter denies wrongdoing and his lawyer says he is cooperating fully. The Ethics Committee is looking into the circumstances of a payment of 2 million Swiss francs, which is £1.35 million, that Platini received in 2011 for work said to have been carried out more than 9 years previously, reported the Press Association. Swiss prosecutors opened criminal proceedings against Blatter on Friday. Platini, who worked as Blatter's technical advisor between 1999 and 2002, was interviewed as a witness by officers from the Attorney General's office. The Frenchman is yet to explain the 9 years delay in payment, but he too denies any wrongdoing. Viewers, let's have a look at Around the World News Recap. World leaders adopt UN goals to end poverty in 15 years. The President meets the Pope. Obama and Putin to hold talks at UN. Chinese President Xi Jinping meets US tech leaders. Hajj stampede, Saudi King orders safety review. US Speaker John Boehner to leave Congress. You're up to date with your top stories so far here on Millennium TV, and don't forget to log into www.millenniumtv.net. Thank you for staying with us. Allah Hafiz.